Harris here from RW Marrickville. Welcome to this week's update, and what I'm going to go through with you very briefly today are the quarterly figures for 2020 in the third quarter of the year. So that's including 2 months in winter and the first month of spring. So let's start with Marrickville. Marrickville was very interesting. There were 67 auctions conducted in this 3-month period that's just passed. If you look at it comparative to last year, there were 43. So the volume is definitely up. The clearance rate was still very encouraging. It was just over 80%, whereas last year was just massively high, 93%. If we move to Dulwich Hill, there were 39 auctions in this quarter that's just passed, comparative to last year again, which is always interesting, sort of gives you a reference point. There were 22 auctions. So again, last year the clearance rates were just over 80%. This year, pretty respectable still at 69%. And then Horston Park, which is always a very small suburb, there were 5 auctions this year, 3 of them sold for 60% clearance. Pretty similar figures last year. There were 6 auctions and 3 of them sold for 50%. So what does all this mean? My personal opinion, it's just shown how COVID has just flipped everything all around. Everything's all over the place. There's no real spring, there's no real winter, there's no real high, low, hot, cold. Everything's kind of whatever it is, and each individual property has its own little market within a sub-market, within a greater market. So I hope that makes sense to you, but we're finding as agents that it's extremely challenging to see patterns in any of the figures and the data that we're getting. And that's not unusual when we've been working under the COVID restrictions that we've had. Now, we're much better obviously than Victoria and to a lesser extent Queensland, but at the same time, the uncertainty of how everyone's lives have changed has translated into property sales. But what I have noticed is the one fundamental thing remains: it doesn't really matter what's going on. If there's demand and the supply is too low, then the figures generally take care of themselves. And that's still very evident in what we've seen in this last 3 months. So this spring will probably be the weirdest, most unusual spring I've ever transacted in the last 25 years. And if you're asking me what's going to happen, I can very, very confidently, with a huge amount of experience, tell you I don't really know. I hope that sort of is slightly comforting, but that's really where we are at, and I'm okay with that. I mean, we're moving forward day by day, week by week is the way to look at this situation. I think if we look any longer term than that, it's really very, very hard to predict. We saw the budget on Tuesday night. I felt sorry for them, having to make projections based on what, when the vaccine comes, all these sorts of things that may or may not happen in the next 12 months moving forward. It's very hard to make long-term forecasts. So that's it from me. If you need any real estate help with anything at all, please feel free to contact us anytime. Bye for now.